Hello, welcome back to the interface. My name's Alex. Welcome to a pretty grey and miserable day in the UK. It's pretty cold and rainy, hence the big yellow coat to combat the miserableness. This is the BMW i5 M60 xDrive, a four-wheel drive, all-electric, really powerful saloon car. It's available now in the UK for £96,840. That's what the i5 M60 range starts from. This particular one on test is £117,000. And there's basically £20,000 of options on this car. Most cars I've reviewed recently on the channel, they seem to charge extra for any number of paint options. This is actually called Brooklyn Grey Metallic, and it's a no-cost option. So what have we got here? Well, this is the brand new 5 Series, the G60. And BMW haven't quite just yet built a bespoke 5 Series. We've got the i4 as well, which is obviously the 4 Series, but this is sharing its platform and sharing its underneath with other vehicles. So we've got the petrol 5 Series, got the hybrid 5 Series, a plug-in hybrid, which is quite nice, and also the full electric i5. So there are certain things on the car and inside the car which you can tell that there's shared platforms. So for example, the bonnet here is absolutely massive and there's no storage space under there, so BMW haven't gone to quite the effort of putting a frunk in there, which would have been quite nice. And also in the interior and the rear seats, which we'll look at in a bit, there is a massive transmission hump, which is left over from when this is a rear-wheel drive petrol car. And obviously an electric car, you don't need that. 2 motors, it's four-wheel drive, xDrive obviously, 593 brake horsepower, 795 newton meters of torque. And let me tell you, when you accelerate and use the launch control, this thing is absolutely rapid. 0 to 60 is in 3.8 seconds. There's a massive 83.9 kilowatt hour battery pack, 400 volt architecture, and then 81.2 kilowatt hours of that is actually usable. So there's a little bit left over, which is quite nice. Charging speeds are pretty good, not the fastest I've ever seen. I think the fastest on the market now is the Genesis GV60, that's 350 kilowatts. This does 205 kilowatts, pretty good though. And then 22 kilowatt AC charging, that's 3-phase. So I came across a charger yesterday, plugged it straight into a 22 kilowatt charger, and it charged pretty quickly. The M60 has 315 miles of WLTP range. The cheaper xDrive 40 has 357 miles. Both of the cars have the same battery pack. Obviously, you just get dual motors on the M60, and then the xDrive has one motor. This did display 315 miles for me. There's a lot of driving modes in the car, so you've got expressive, sport, efficient. When you put the car on efficient and then maximum range, which limits the car to 60 miles an hour, this did display 315 miles of range. So looking around the front, we've got a quad LED headlight setup. We've got the iconic BMW kidney grille. This does light up at night time, which is quite nice. Sort of the daytime running light setup as well. We've got a massive bonnet, which doesn't have any storage underneath it. Lots of bits and pieces down here. We've got some black accenting down here, parking sensors there. There is an optional carbon fibre pack, which has some carbon extras down here as well. Just looking down here as well, we've got the front-facing camera, which is quite nice, and then we've got a massive square sensor bank for the adaptive cruise control. It's got some quite clever smart driving and sort of self-driving features, which is quite cool. This being the M60, we do have a M badge as well. Also got the BMW badge encased in the blue accenting, indicating it's a hybrid or electric BMW, which is quite nice, sort of stands out. But overall, it's a really good looking car. I think BMW have had some interesting, I think that's the nicest thing I can say, interesting looking cars like the iX, which is pretty shocking looking in my opinion. The i7 is also not a looker, but the 5 Series for me is really, really good looking. I think that BMW have done a good job with this, and some of their other electric cars, as I said, aren't quite hitting the mark for me. Obviously the i3 was launched ages ago, nearly 10 years ago now, and that was quite a good looking car, and you've got bits of that in here still, I think. And then the i4 as well is got those weird kidney grills, but I think BMW have done a good job of sort of staying restrained with this one, and the kidney grills aren't too big. We just have got those LED accenting around there. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments what you think about the new design of the i5. Just looking around the side of the i5, we've got a really nice sort of quite simple but yet quite interesting designs. We've got some really nice sort of broad shoulders here. On the new 5 Series, all models have this sort of engraved embossed 5 on the C-pillar here. And then we've got sort of nice black tinted windows, black accenting in between them. We've got a panoramic roof on this one, which is actually an optional extra. There's a price on screen for that. This being the M60, sort of following in with the M5 and other models, we have got the M design sort of carbon fibre mirrors here with the little sort of spoilery bit on there. That's sort of an iconic thing that the M division have been doing for a while. We've got some flush door handles here which sort of pull out quite nicely. This is a really good solution. Obviously having flush door handles is a really good way of improving the aerodynamics of a car, but there are some interesting implementations that I've seen in the market at the moment, but this is quite a nice elegant solution. We've got some lights built into the mirrors here, we've got some lights built in here, so you do get some good illumination at night time, which is quite a nice feature. This one, BMW do support Apple's car key feature. So what you can do is pair your phone with the car, and then using the NFC on the iPhone and the Apple Watch actually, you can unlock the car and get access to it, even if you don't have the key with you, which is perfect. So imagine if you're swimming, for example, just have your Apple Watch with you. You don't have to leave the key anywhere or whatever. You can just use the watch to get back in the car. And what's quite nice is that does work when the iPhone is dead as well, up to a few hours. You can use that if you need to get back in your car. Really, really good feature. Unfortunately, I can't demo it because you do need both car keys to actually activate it, obviously for security reasons, which is a good feature. I've got a nice sort of crease down here, which is quite nice, and this black accenting down here sort of hides the height of the vehicle because the batteries do sit quite low. Looking at the alloy wheels, these are quite big alloy wheels. We've got 21-inch aero wheels. These are £1,500 option, and we've got some nice big ventilated discs down there and some red brake calipers. As for tyres, these are sitting on Continental tyres, and they seem to have good grip even in wet conditions. In terms of the size, this is a pretty big vehicle. There's some specs on screen for how long this one is. I'm not used to such a massive saloon car, but it is quite a big vehicle. The additions of the cameras do really help in terms of manoeuvring it and reversing it. The new 5 Series itself is actually longer, wider and taller than the old 5 Series, and there's an extra 20mm between the two wheels. Just looking underneath the bonnet, just in case you're interested, to open the bonnet there's a handle underneath the driver's section. Just pull that twice and it will open. I did expect it being a German car to be on the left hand side, but that was, BMW obviously moved that for the right hand drive market, which is quite nice. Got hydraulic struts, which is quite nice to see. Certain cars have done away with that. And you can see there's a massive amount of space under here. Massive amount of stuff under here. So you've got a lot of plastic cladding under there. Unfortunately, you can't really lift that up, but there's lots of electronical gubbins under there. They could have put a frunk in. I think with if this was a bespoke EV, there would have been a lot more space to put some storage under there, which would be quite nice for charging cables. But as you see in the boot section, there is enough space underneath the boot floor for the charging cables. So what's the BMW i5 M60 like to drive? Well, given its price tag, it does feel very premium. There are a few bits and pieces. So as I mentioned in the video, this one is about £120,000. The i5 range, so not the M60, starts from around £70,000. And there are a few bits and pieces in here which you can tell that it isn't quite the £100,000 price point in terms of the quality, in terms of the materials and different things. You are paying for a lot of the EV performance, you are paying for the battery as well, because the petrol 5 Series starts from around £50,000. And I will say this is a £50,000–60,000 interior. Well, you are paying for the increase in performance, you are paying for the battery. It's a very complicated and dual motor system, so they've done a very good job in terms of the EV performance. So in terms of the comfort, the seats are incredibly comfortable. We've got a lot of adjustability on the electronic seats here. We can have lumbar support, there's ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, and you can also have presets for different drivers in the vehicle. There are a few bits and pieces with the wind noise, so the glass on this car isn't acoustic, so I can hear some wind noise, especially if it's raining. Little bits of wind noise on motorway speeds around 70 miles an hour. There's a little bit of wind whistle from the mirrors here, but the big noticeable thing for me is I can hear a lot of the ground outside. Steering is fantastic. There's obviously a few different driving modes, but the steering is really well weighted. This steering wheel, while it looks a little bit odd, so it's a little bit weirdly proportioned, got some weird sizes here, but it's a really comfortable steering wheel. I really like the width of the steering wheel. I really like the look of it as well, and the fact that BMW have kept physical buttons. So these do look like they would be haptic buttons, but they are all clicky. They're not haptic like Volkswagen have done with the ID3, which is good. So the steering is really good, really precise, trying to figure out where the vehicle is pointed. This car has got progressive or adaptive steering, so what that essentially means is that the car will require less turns of the wheel at slower speeds to turn the actual wheels outside, and then at highway motorway speeds the steering becomes a little bit less responsive, just so you're not sort of weaving all over the place. But at slow speeds around car parks, it is fantastic, and that really helps the fact that we've got rear wheel steering as well. So the back wheels will move a few degrees just in tandem with the front wheels, and so you can get a bit more precise accuracy. And the really precise steering really helps the fact that the i5 is such a big car. Even the normal 5 Series, the petrol one, is still a big car. The main thing about the i5 M60, especially the M60 model, is the performance. BMW this is essentially the M5 but electric. The naming M60 is a little bit odd, but essentially all you need to know is this is the i5M. We've actually got 600 brake horsepower from the dual motor system, and I've got to say, 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds, around 3.6 seconds in the real world really. It's absolutely astonishing, the raw acceleration of the i5. So I'll just demonstrate this now. So 40 mile an hour, absolutely floor it, and we're 60. That's just 60 in like 2 seconds. Absolutely insane. And that noise you can hear is from the personal driver mode. So if we come down to my modes here, so we click this little haptic button here, we've got personal, sport, efficient, expressive, relaxed, digital, art as well. So we mentioned earlier in the video that the different driving modes do different things. So all you need to know is that sport mode disables the traction control and we get some red glow. So if we enable sport mode, say yes, we want to activate the traction control, we get a bit of side bolster support there, and we've got everything red inside, and we get optimum traction, and we get pure driving. It says pure driving pleasure. So and we get that lovely sort of electronic noise. And what we can do is come to expressive, and we get the sort of yellow interior, and we get a different sort of noise. So almost sounds like a choir or like a string quartet a little bit. So they sound interesting. Definitely the best sort of fake EV noises I've ever heard. The mode I do like is efficient. So we get maximum range out of the vehicle. The range little calculator down here says 134 miles of range from 58%. Welcome to the interior of the BMW i5 M60. And I've got to say, what a gorgeous cabin this absolutely is. I've spent maybe 10-15 minutes in the passenger seat of a BMW i7, and that was a lot more expensive than this car. The BMW i5 range starts from around £70,000, maybe a little bit less. I'll put the exact figure on screen now. And this one obviously is 120, so it's almost nearly double the price of the standard i5. But the i7 is about 140 something thousand pounds. And this piano black plastic, in my opinion, looks really cheap. And unfortunately, what the i7 had was this material all on the doors here, which was quite unfortunate. It looked very cheap. A lot of the buttons look quite cheap as well. And thankfully, what BMW have done with the i5 is kept it looking a lot nicer. So you've got this lovely sort of crystal theme going on here. So this light bar here, which is absolutely amazing. And that takes its inspiration from whatever driving mode you're in, which is lovely. So yeah, in my opinion, the i7, not as good quality as the i5, which is a bit odd considering the price points. But I think having spent quite a few hours behind the driver's seat in the last few days, this is a really, really good quality vehicle. The ride quality as well is exceptional. So in the inside, what we've got is the leather seat option, so it's £2,100. There's also the carbon fibre dash, this sort of material here, which is quite nice. That's 400 quid. The sunroof as well is 1,600 quid. It's just a glass panoramic roof, you can't open it. There's a little button here to open the blind. And then we've got two massive displays. We've got a 14.9-inch infotainment screen, which is really, really lovely to use. I will say the BMW iDrive software, it's on version 8.5 now. They have said that there is some improvements. Having never used a BMW infotainment screen before in my life, I have found it quite difficult to navigate around. Yeah, some of the icons look quite out of date. Hard to find certain settings. There's no nice shortcuts to certain things. It's not quite what I'm used to. I prefer using CarPlay, but to access the radio and different things, it seems like there's a lot of stuff just there, if that makes sense. And there's also a 12.3-inch driver's display. This is really, really good as well. There's a head-up display on this particular model because it's got an option extra for that. And then we've got fully wireless Apple CarPlay, which is fantastic. So just looking at what the interior is like, it is, as I said, it is really good quality. So we've got this crystal iDrive wheel here, which is really good. This infotainment screen is really responsive to the touch. You can see it's very quick. It's almost iPad-like in terms of its responsiveness. I will mention that there is a lack of buttons for the infotainment and sort of the climate control system. So we've got two air vents here, and you control them using these little wheels here to control the flow of or the direction of flow. That's all right. And then you can turn up and down each individual fan and its speed using this little slider. That's quite nice as well. So you can tap on 1 or 0 or get it in between. That's nice to use as well. And then we've got 3 buttons here, which are touch capacitive. So if you just tap them, they don't do anything. You have to sort of press quite firmly. And that's the rear, but I actually didn't even press it still. So you've got to press quite firmly, and that's the hazard lights. So you can see the hazard lights have lit up the entire light bar, which is quite cool. I've got the heated windscreen and the heated rear windscreen as well. For a full in-depth look at the infotainment system on the BMW i5, this also applies to the 5 Series as well, the standard 5 Series. Take a look at our video in the top right corner now, or in the description down below, where I go over everything in depth about the infotainment screen and the driver's display and how to use it. Coming down here, obviously the black piano black plastic everywhere, got a little crystal. This is not as in your face as the BMW M8, for example, but it's still like light crystals. We've got a crystal controller for the gears, which is quite nice to use. C3 one for the start-stop. We've got the iDrive one there. We've got the volume controller there as well. I have found, interestingly, that the volume control here is a little bit inaccurate compared to the volume control on the steering wheel actually is harder to use than the one here, which is, I'm glad BMW kept the little rocker in, because a lot of cars now are getting rid of all the physical controls for everything, basically. Looking down here, we've got 2 USB-C ports, both of which do data and charging. And there's a pad here for wireless charging. Only one of them does wireless charging, so the one on the right does. Unfortunately, the one on the left is just a holder for someone's phone. Nice and deep there, holds the biggest of smartphones. And we've got some really, really cool and clever cup holders. So these have got little grips in them which come and go based on what size cup you've got. There's a little light bar in there, which looks quite cool at night time. And then coming back here, we've got the little plinth here for all the controls. As I mentioned earlier, this car is a modified petrol platform, essentially. And that means there are still some leftovers. So this entire unit here, in other cars, like the Genesis vehicles, they've used this space for storage, and what BMW could have done in the i5, especially given the price point of the i5 M60, is put some storage in here. So I would guarantee there's nothing under here at all. I would imagine it's empty space. And unfortunately, that's the downside of having a shared platform, is that we've got leftovers from the ICE model. Usual clever sort of central armrest here, so we click a button there, it opens up halfway. There's enough space in there for a few things. Obviously not as deep as other vehicles, again because of the fake transmission hub we've got here, but you could store a few bits and pieces in there. There's a 12-volt socket as well, quite a cheap little cover there, but there's enough space in there for a few things. So just looking at the steering wheel, we've got electrically adjustable, so I can adjust the height and rake of the steering wheel using electronics, and it's to get it a bit more comfortable. We've got a little red band here it's more of a sporty touch, isn't it? So obviously being the M60 model, you've got that little red strip there. So if you're cornering, racing, you don't have to glance down. You can sort of get a good perspective on where the steering wheel is. Not sure how important that is on an electric saloon car, but we've got the option there and it does look quite nice. We've got the iconic sort of red and blue stitching on the steering wheel, and again it's on the seat belts as well, which is quite cool. There's also a good amount of buttons here, so we actually got some physical sliders here for the different volume controls on tracks and stuff, and some actual buttons are not haptic for the media system, and then the settings and things for the driver's display. Cruise control is exceptionally easy to use. For some weird reason, the cruise control in some vehicles is quite hard to fathom initially, and I'm glad BMW have made this so simple. So all you have to do is click on this icon here to activate the cruise control, cycle through 3 different modes, either like distance control, speed control, or full-on assisted driving, set, and then just use the little plus rocker to change the speed. Absolutely amazing. One feature I really do like is that if you're on the motorway, you're on 40 mile an hour, and it suddenly changes, or it will change to 70 miles an hour, it'll just nice to recommend that you change the cruise control speed up to 70, and you do that with one button. Absolutely amazing. One nice little feature is automatic wipers. Now, automatic wipers aren't an exclusive thing to BMW, obviously, but it's the indication of what mode the wipers are in. So there's a little wiper stalk here, and there's a little auto symbol, and it has a little light next to it. So if you kick it up 1 notch, the wipers will come on for 1 stroke, and then you've got the little green light to indicate that the automatic function is active, which is really good because you're not 100% sure sometimes in vehicles. Yes, it says automatic is up 1 notch, but you're not 100% sure if it is actually or not, and I really like that feature. And then lastly, we've got the little boost paddle here, so that'll give you the full 593 brake horsepower for 10 seconds, full torque, full power if you pull the boost pedal. There's a few buttons down here, so usually where you find there's sort of a little switch for lights, we've got touchscreen stuff, so I've got the vent control there, we've got rear fog light you can turn on. I really want these to be a bit more solid. It would be a lot better. Not solid, but in terms of sort of touch based, not haptic based, which is a bit annoying. They seem to work okay, but I would prefer everything to be a bit better. Yeah, not a massive fan of that system there. Again, the same thing for these little buttons here, so you can lock all the doors and unlock all the doors. Lots of driver profiles here. And then we've got some proper physical buttons for the mirrors, the windows, and that sort of thing. And then a lovely feature, which I like, is you can open the boot. There's a little rocker switch here to open and close the boot, which is quite cool. All hands free. There's also a decent sized glove box, so you press it with a button, and it opens the glove box quite slowly. Nice fabric line there, not too big. It could be a little bit bigger, but it's not too small either, so that's quite nice. BMW say the M60 model would do 315 miles on one charge. The xDrive 40 would do a little bit more, basically 360 miles. So personally for me, I would just choose the xDrive if I was after range. The M60 obviously offers that much more sort of raw performance, which is nice. This will do 350 miles on one charge. Obviously the battery is pretty big, it's about 81 kilowatt hours usable. But the thing to remember is that the car will only do it if it's in efficient mode, and then with the sort of maximum efficiency mode, which disables a lot of the performance. It sort of delays the throttle response a little bit, limits it to 60 miles an hour, and then also disables a lot of the climate control system. So what we can do here is come down to activate maximum range. It says now I've got 160 miles of range from 57% battery. The only annoying little thing about that is that because it disables the climate control system, the car does tend to fog up a lot easier. So personally for me, I'll just have that deactivated. I don't particularly need the maximum range. It seems to do a good job. And then the charging speeds on the i5 are really good. So 205 kilowatt hours. And this does work on the Tesla superchargers network, which is fantastic. There are some cars I've discovered recently, like Genesis vehicles, that don't unfortunately work with the Tesla supercharger network, and some cars don't tend to charge that quickly on those chargers either. So this did ramp up to about 200 kilowatts at 30%, and it charged incredibly fast. I think in half an hour it got from 30-something% to 90 or 80% actually in just 30 minutes, which was absolutely incredible. In terms of sort of real world efficiency, it is getting some good figures now and again. And then the BMW Connected Services app, the iDrive app on the iPhone, I'll put a picture of that on screen, is absolutely fantastic. So what I did when I got the car, I connected my BMW sort of ID to the car, registered it, put the VIN number in, and if you own the car, you can do that as well, which is quite cool. And what it'll do is give you how many kilowatt hours you used per 100 miles, and then you can do some calculations online. There's some websites which you can work out the actual efficiency. So the most usable sort of format for me and other people is that how many miles per kilowatt hour. It's getting about 2.5, sometimes as low as 1.7, and up to 3 miles per kilowatt hour, which is okay. This is a heavy car, this is a big car as well. So efficiency on the M60 isn't going to be its strongest suit. I'd imagine the xDrive 40, because it's got one less motor, it's probably got a few less bits and pieces in it, and it should be a lot more efficient. As I said, this has got 600 brake horsepower. The cheaper xDrive 40 has got about 300 brake horsepower. But I don't think people are buying the i5 M60 for purely efficiency reasons alone. But I don't think people are going to have a problem with this on the motorway. It's very calm, very serene, but when it wants to, it picks up the pace and becomes a M5 rival. One thing I really love about the BMW i5 is the fact that it doesn't get annoying. There's some other cars I've driven recently that they interfere with your driving life so much. I mean, lane assist, lane warning assistant it's an important feature. The Euro NCAP think it's an important feature, but they get so intrusive, so loud. There's so many bongs and things. This car doesn't make any noises. Yes, it's got the lane warning assistant, but all it does is just vibrate the steering wheel, and that's enough to just nudge you back into the lane you're in, and you can disable it if you want to. We have got a one-pedal driving mode, which is fantastic. Some of the cars, again, I've driven, they have one-pedal driving, but they disable that one-pedal driving after a little while, whereas the i5 has got a B mode, like the Volkswagen e-Golf used to have, and that is essentially a replacement for the one-pedal driving, and BMW just don't name it that, but that is essentially what it is. So all you do is put it into drive and then knock the little crystal-y thing here back one notch, and it becomes into B, and it behaves really, really well in the B mode. So it is essentially one-pedal driving, and then you've got a little meter here that tells you that the car's in sort of regen mode. That's really good. Also, auto hold is you just turn it on, and then every time you get back in the car, auto hold is remained on. Again, there are some other vehicles I've driven recently which they just faff around with it. It's incredibly annoying. The only other thing that's a tad annoying is the fact that the i5 has got a sort of a speed recognition system, sort of speed limits. It will, like the EM-Y1 I drove recently, it will just bong every time you're 1 mile an hour over that speed limit, even if you're trying to slow down. But that can be easily disabled within the infotainment. But that does unfortunately come back on every time. But I think there's some legislation there from the Euro NCAP or from government to have that feature remaining on every time you get back in. I think it's for certain safety requirements. But overall, the BMW i5 is got to be the most least annoying car, apart from sort of a very basic manual car, in terms of it interfering with your daily life. I drove this from Farnborough about 2.5 hours, nearly 3 hours, to pick this up from BMW head office. It was the most calmest, sort of most relaxing drive I've ever had. It was absolutely amazing. So just jumping in the back seats of the BMW i5, there's a really good amount of space back here. So obviously being a big executive sort of saloon car, there's a really good amount of legroom here as well. So I'm about 5'7", there's a good amount of headroom as well, a little bit, a few inches. We've got this big glass panoramic sunroof as well, which is quite nice, gives it a bit more of an open feeling. There's also some blinds on these sides here, so you can lift up these ones. And there's also little mini blinds on the quarter lights as well. You can have those sort of closed if you want to have a more peaceful journey. Also just behind me is a rear blind on the rear window as well. I can't see any way of opening it from the passenger seats, but there is a button in the front of the driver's seat as well. So that opens up electronically, and you can get a more peaceful environment if you're chauffeuring someone around in the back of the i5. So there's some really comfortable seats back here as well. So seating for 5, these are really soft, lovely, comfortable seats. And then these seats here are sculpted so you can get your knees back in. Unfortunately, I'm not lucky enough to be really tall. It looks like there's some good space there for your knees if you are a bit more taller than me. There's a central transmission amp here, which is a bit weird. I did notice in the front as well that there's lack of storage where the transmission hump would be, essentially. And then obviously the lack of space in the centre console is impacting it as well. This unfortunately is just a layover from the petrol version of the 5 Series. BMW haven't gone to the expense and the effort to convert this to have a flat floor. If the i5 was a bespoke EV, which it really could have done with being, you would have a bit more space in the back here. So it does have its downsides and upsides of the i5, but that is unfortunately one of the downsides. In terms of charging, in the i5 you don't have a problem of having any chargers. In the back alone there are 4 USB-C ports, and in the front there are 2. We've got some interesting, unique sort of mounts for iPads. So BMW do sell a optional like sort of entertainment mount for an iPad, so you can plug it into there. It's got like a bespoke connector, and you can mount an iPad there. And there's a little light bar, and then you've got a USB-C port. That is enough to actually charge a MacBook off that, which is quite good. And then there are 2 USB-C ports down there. Got a digital sort of climate control system, which is quite nice to use. And there's a little phone pad in there as well. And then the central armrest as well comes out quite nice and easily. It's very solid feeling, so you can actually lean on that quite nice. And then there are 2 little cup holders as well. Like the front, there are 2 little grips as well to sort of secure bigger cups in, save them from flapping around and sort of getting spilt. But overall, in the back of the i5, definitely a nice place to spend a journey. Personally, I'm not the sort of person who goes in the back of vehicles. I like to drive myself, but I can see this being a lovely car to sort of be driven around in. So at the back, you have got ventilated and heated seats. There is a climate control system, as I mentioned, and we've got some side air vents as well, like the Genesis GV60. So that's quite nice to see. And we've got the Bowers & Wilkins sound system as well. So looking around the back of the i5, sort of saloon style rear end really, and there is also that new i5 Touring, which has been available as of yesterday. I've got the carbon fibre pack on this vehicle, so we've got a nice little boot spoiler there. Big rear window. I'm sad to say there is no rear wiper on this vehicle, which is really unfortunate, especially like a day like today. It has got rain all over it. I would imagine you have to keep that ceramic coated to get that working properly. Looking at the back again, we've got the blue BMW badge, which is quite nice. It's got the i5 branding and then the M60 branding. We've also got a little rear camera there for the rear sort of CCTV system and reversing as well. Big diffuser down there, got some rear parking sensors. And this one obviously has done quite a few miles at the moment, and it is quite filthy. Open the rear boot, there's also a little handle here, and that electronically opens. And we've got a massive boot in there. We've got 490 litres of boot space with the seats folded up. And what you can do is pull these handles here, and it will release the seats for you quite on its own. Again, big boot space, got some Velcroed accessories in there, and then what you can do is put the charging cable underneath this false floor here. So this little section here is bigger than it would be in the petrol 5 Series, and there are some charging bags in there. It's got a 3-pin socket and the Type 2 socket as well. But yeah, really, really good amount of space there. Some tie-down points, there's some metal handles there, little tie-down points there. But there isn't a opening underneath this section. I'd imagine that's where some of the battery stuff is and sort of motors for the rear-wheel drive. This bit here is all cloth line. We've got an accessory kit there, and doesn't seem to have the problem like the Tesla Model 3 did, where the water drips down inside of the boot, which is quite nice. And then what you can do is electronically close the boot again, and it will close by itself. But overall, I think it's a really nice design, very clean, very it's back to what BMW have done in the past. It looks really stylish, not ugly at all. So in conclusion, what do I think about the i5 M60? Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I think the xDrive 40 might be a better option for most people. But I can understand if you want the performance of a BMW M5 or even an M4, if you want the size and sort of the practicality of a 5 Series, and you're not too overly bothered about the efficiency and the range, even though it is really good as it is, you will get more range from the xDrive 40. I think, yeah, definitely go and test drive the i5 M60 if it's in your price budget, obviously. But yeah, overall, it's a fantastic car to drive. Some really good interior quality items, even though I don't think that it's quite up there in terms of the price. I do think that the standard i5 is definitely worth more of the money in terms of what you get, because they are quite similar in terms of the quality, in terms of the kit you get. There are some optional extras on this one, but I think, yeah, you are paying for the big battery, you are paying for the 2 motors that are really high performance. I personally think you might be better off with the standard i5 xDrive 40. And as of a few days ago, the i5 Touring has now become available if you do want more space, and there is a cheaper variant of the iDrive Touring compared to the standard i5 Saloon as of recording on the 9th of February. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching this video from The Interface. My name's Alex. If you want to learn more about what we make and do, visit the website theinterface.uk. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.